Hey everyone, before I get started, I just want to remind you that if you like my content, hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and then join the Militia Man and Crew Patreon community by clicking the link in the caption. Hey, good evening everybody. Militia Man and Crew here on the 17th. We're going to get started on a few articles, not a big one. It's going to be relatively short, but a lot of good information. I think it's pretty powerful, and I think everybody really at this stage of the game really should pay attention to. A lot of the news out there is really telling us a story. And one thing you have to realize too is that the stories that we get, sometimes you have to unpack all that data and find out what it really kind of leads to, because they're just not going to tell us every little bit and piece of the puzzle. It just can't do that, especially when it becomes a sensitive time of the integration into the global financial system. Anyway, a fascinating article is Prime Minister. It says the new Iraq has moved forward and there's no going back. You have to ask yourself, why would he say this? Well, he would say this because of many different reasons. Because A, one, it's true, or B, it's part of the circumstances, Democracy Day. But it says the Prime Minister Shia al-Sudani affirmed on Tuesday that the new Iraq has moved forward and there's no going back, while pointing out that the government program focuses on protecting the gains of democracy and citizens' rights and strengthening the state and its institutions. All of this stuff is really pretty powerful when he talks about stuff like this. But he's talking about Iraq as the most deserving country to celebrate Democracy Day, as today represents a unique model for its applications and for the peaceful transfer of power in the Middle East. After our people waged a struggle that extended for years against the dictatorship, were subjected to the most heinous types of repression practices and presented hundreds of thousands of victims. So look, it's a powerful day. So that's what he's talking about. But he says he's moving forward and there's no going back. He goes on and says that the completion of this political frameworks led to the facilitation of the termination of the United Nations support mission in Iraq, the termination of the presence of the International Coalition to Combat Terrorism, and the transition to bilateral relations. So in other words, instead of having a coalition relationships, he's going to have bilateral, one-on-one. A big deal, which is a good thing. It means sovereignty to me. He points out that our government program focused on protecting the gains of the democratic system through reforms, combating corruption, providing the requirements for a decent life, rebuilding the country, development, and holding accountable those who threaten social peace. The supreme authority has affirmed that this is the correct approach that our people should follow. And I think al-Sudani is doing exactly what that supreme authority has suggested of him. So anyway, this article, even if it has references to September 15th, 2023, Democracy Day event, which is a similar article, and not 2025, Iraq News might have reposted it for a relevance of their own. We don't know. But again, if it's fresh, it's a fresh speech. It echoes al-Sudani's consistent playbook, his 2025 economic conference speeches on sovereignty. He had economic speeches, and he also talked about his sovereignty. And he's also in the past talked about the exchange rate of the dinar being stronger than the dollar. But they don't say that here. But he has said things like that. Either way, this article sets the table for reinforcing irreversible reforms. In other words, those reforms he mentioned are irreversible, which is aligning with the Central Bank of Iraq's Bank of International Settlements bid. In other words, the bid to join the Bank of International Settlements. That's that Bank of England meeting, all right? And oil momentum, the movement of oil, moving oil across through the Cyan, for instance. That's the implications of it. Basically, the article doesn't have any red flags. It looks to be a political groundwork for the economic surge that here at Militia Man and Crew we've studied. So it's an economic push, and it's also a confidence builder for the people, and appropriately so. They've been through a lot, and they're coming out of it. That's how I see it. So if we're going to talk about oil, it says SOMO, we've completed all contracts and obligations with the companies purchasing oil produced in the region. It says that what happened in the Kurdistan region is a matter of understandings and establishing work mechanisms. Mechanisms is really a big word, and in the app, how it applies is going to be something I'll get into. But it says within those establishing working mechanisms, it says noting that law applies to everyone. So everybody that's working in conjunction with mechanisms, everybody that's involved, whether it's the 3 entities that are working, the 3 years tripartite budget, that's effectively a mechanism that they use to pay operational salaries and investment. And yet we haven't quite seen everything. The budget, for instance, is supposedly have mechanisms. And then also the oil movement through the Cyan with the region, Kurdistan, and the IOCs, the international oil companies. There's circumstances. So that's a double tripartite right there, right? Okay, there's going to be more to that story. It says the federal government, the regional government, and the producing companies need to complete the mechanism. So I just told you about a tripartite. They just told you federal government, regional government, and producing companies. I call it the IOCs. Well, so does everybody else. Talking about the implementing of the budget law, right? The tripartite budget law. There's number 2, as far as tripartites are concerned. And advanced understandings have been reached in this regard, indicating that efforts are ongoing to reach a final agreement that will allow the resumption of pumping crude oil to the Turkish port of Cyan and the start of exports. It says the crude oil produced in the Kurdistan region is not currently exported, so it's not just yet, but it's consumed locally within the region. We're working in accordance with the 2025 budget law to convert the surplus quantities after local consumption into exports. He points out that the oil marketing company, that part of the tripartite, has completed all its contracts and obligations with purchasing companies and is ready to receive quantities as soon as they are pumped by the producing companies and the regional government. The resumption of oil exports will restore Iraq's luster as a primary source for the European market. So when they talked about 200 to 400,000 barrels a day, now they're talking about 1.5 to 2.2 million barrels a day. That's really big because it's a lot of money and it can do a lot of things. It can help pay for the arrears. It can help pay for everything. It can get everybody caught up. It can help go to the treasury. It can do all these different things. But also, what does it do? It increases the value of their currency. My opinion, of course. But the resumption of exports will restore Iraq's luster, which we talked about. It says a primary source for the European market, which is thirsty for this type of oil, especially in light of the Russian-European crisis and absence of Russian supplies, as Iraqi oil is distinguished by its similarity in quality to the Russian oil. That's interesting stuff to know. To me, this is just shaping up very, very nicely. The implication of this ties into many key issues that are effectively going to be related to the digital dinar, because there's another mechanism we haven't talked about. We haven't talked about another tripartite yet, but I've mentioned it last night, I think. It says that Al-Alaq and the Bank of England, they had a meeting with the Bank of International Settlements. There's kind of a push for joining that. And there's good reason for that. The BIS is behind the Agora project, which is digital CBDCs and many other things, of course. But it is about CBDCs and new technologies. And some of these technologies, whether they're direct or indirect, include the RLUSD, Ripple US dollar, XRP, HEDERA. Those technologies you're going to probably find to be the glue to a digital dinar. And there's going to be reasons for that. They're not really openly talking to you about it that way, but they do indirectly on a global stage. If you do your research, you're probably going to find out that I'm spot on this. The article has not mentioned that, okay? Like I said, they don't talk about that, but they do talk about it in outliers. And those outliers are real, and they're coming to fruition because Iraq's going into a new digital age. A digital dinar is a real thing that's on the table. Al-Alaq himself talked about being or launching a digital dinar. The Agora project is with the Bank of International Settlements. Iraq just met with the Central Bank of England and is talking about a bid, for instance, to join the bank. So ultimately, these mechanisms, if you will, these technologies are going to be able to do fast, efficient, and bring decent yield. And yield is something, obviously, everybody knows that getting a yield on your money, for instance, if you go to the bank, you don't get much, but they used to. But I think they're going to be doing something that's really similar to that, is that they're going to be able to move money so fast that it's going to save money. And they're also going to pay, because of that technology, they're going to pay a yield. And so if you convert into RLUSD, pays a yield, and potentially other technologies do the same, it's going to be hedging. And so that they'll be able to have liquidity to be able to do large transfers of oil fast. And they say sub-seconds. A lot of people are sticking to 3 to 5 seconds that it'll take to do a trade, but that's I don't think that's the case. Right? And I know that I have it in print, but again, you guys do your own research. Check it out. Fast, efficient, decent yields, confidence, stability are key going forward. They're going to need everybody to be on board. And obviously, they've done their diligence. This isn't new. You know, the Agora project has been underway for probably a decade. Okay, and think about it for a minute. We did a study on this, and you can go back into Patreon and do Agora, and you'll probably find how quickly you can find it. And you'll see that what I'm talking about is real, and it's taking place. And the people that are putting these digital currencies together, the central bank, they are working with some of those entities I mentioned, like XRP and HEDERA, and there's reasons for that. And if you guys know Zane Cash, for instance, Zane Cash uses HEDERA. They got 20 million people using it in the company for Zane Cash. Ripple, global. Okay? You probably think that there's things that we don't know, but there's also things that we do know. And we do know that SBI Holdings out of Japan has been involved with Bank of International Settlements. SBI is an arm of Ripple. So tied into Iraq. Is it public? Is it going all around the world talking about these things? Not necessarily. But is it public information? Yeah, it surely is. All of these things are fast, efficient, decent yields, stability, credibility, increased productions in oil, income-driven yields, brings demand. That's what investors want. All of those things. Confidence, security, stability, and if you guys notice, it's awfully quiet in the Middle East right now. It has been for a little bit, I think since beginning of September, or even earlier than that, but it is relatively quiet. And I like that when it's quiet. Okay, so today's salaries, non-oil revenues, net oil exports are on the table for the Kurdistan Regional Government. It says the Kurdistan Regional Government Council of Ministers is scheduled to hold a meeting Wednesday, today, September 17th. It says the first access will discuss the issue of oil exports, non-oil revenues, and salaries of Kurdistan region employees. So again, we're talking about non-oil revenues now too, oil and salaries. That's 3 things. That's almost like 4. But bottom line, the second axis, when I mean 4, I was talking about earlier, ahead of myself, 2 tripartites, right? I think what we're going to talk about most prevalently is 3, but that little bit right there is 4, but it's not. It's a subset. I won't confuse you. The second axis will discuss the unifying of financial procedures between the 2 governments. Unifying financial procedures. What is that? Salaries. Unifying them. Financial procedures. How are we going to do it? Well, they're going to have a unified account. And if they're going to do it through a blockchain system, they're going to have accountability. And wait, isn't the IQD system, IQD world, a blockchain system? Yeah. Non-oil revenues fits with the IQD? Yeah, it sure does. there's a lot to unpack, everybody. It's not just about one little thing. It's a very complex process. But the bottom line is that what we're seeing is that they have accumulated quietly all of this technology and all of these different components for, at the end of the day, what we're looking for is a real effective exchange rate. That's how I see it anyway. I suggest that we're going to see a redenomination, a revaluation, and we're going to see an application of a real effective exchange rate. And I think it's got legs. I think it really does, and it really has. It has more than legs. It's got a lot of support. A lot of support. I think it's in cement. That might even be a component of why it's going to work, is truly cement. And then we can even throw in food, like wheat, non-oil revenues, remember? All those things? Okay. Anyway, they basically talked about that it could happen within about 48 hours if this can happen. Let's see if that holds true. And that's from today. And let's see. Here's another same thing, same kind of topic, a little different, but it says Kurdistan's oil is on the verge of export. Somewhat completes its commitments, and the final obstacle is the company's guarantees. So guarantees, if you think about it, they're probably a little deeper than a lot of people realize. What do you need for a guarantee? Well, first off, when you have a contract, you need a signature, an accurate one. A guarantee is a contract, a guarantee to do it and stick with it. To me, that's part of it. It says this oil expert, Kovin Sherwani is his name. September 25th, the National Oil Marketing Company has concluded contracts and obligations with companies purchasing oil from the Kurdistan region in preparation for resuming exports in the coming days. Okay, so if they have contracts and they did sign, and they did it by electronic smart contracts, there's guarantees. In an interview with the new outlets, it talks about completing these contracts means that SOMO has concluded deals with some buyers to market quantities of the region's oil, indicating that the only remaining obstacle is the guarantees demanded by the oil-producing companies regarding how they will receive their dues. So is it just another signature? Okay, because guarantees, but they said that they've got that portion of it done. The company stipulated within written guarantees in a tripartite agreement between the Federal Ministry of Oil, the region's Ministry of Natural Resources, and the foreign companies. So that's the second tripartite budget. The tripartite budget, and then now you have the Ministry of Oil, Ministry of Natural Resources, and the foreign companies' IOCs. It says the issue relates to organizing the payment mechanism and receiving the funds, which is the last obstacle, resuming exports. Fascinating how they get all to these things, and they're doing it quickly. And if it holds true with the article that talks about they could do that within 48 hours, that's fascinating. So we'll see. But again, I think the article actually kind of suggests if they get that to that stage. But what we're seeing here in these articles, why is it? Why would al-Sudani talk about we're not going back? We're ready to go. Yeah, we'll see. So basically, if we look closely at these, they're now talking in a converging tripartite issues with saying it. There are a few of them, and like I've said, the tripartite budget, which is 3 years, includes oil and salaries. The oil and salaries have their own tripartite as well, which is the region, the center, and the international oil companies. Because the tripartite budget is a 3-year budget, operational and investment-wise. And we haven't seen portions of that yet. But anyway, it goes on, well, I do anyway. It says that the region, the center, international oil companies is another part of it. But where's the third tripartite part of the system? My view is it's likely the mechanism that will be used to seal them all together. The glue, if you will. The glue, to me, the glue ingredients include RLUSD, XRP, and HEDERA. These are technologies for effectively instant electronic payments across borders. You know what's interesting is the kicker is that it'll be done for oil trade, massive oil trade. And then you have to ask yourself, well, where might that start first? Where would it start first? What borders? We have a deadline coming up for the IQD system for all the borders to be done on the 30th. What's the largest port? My guess, Port of Fa. I think we'll see it first in something along those lines. When I talked about RLUSD and XRP and HBAR, technologies for instant electronic cross-border payments, again, what I'm getting at is if you think of the ports and their natural resources, those non-oil income, what do they have? Fast trade, they're cheap, secure, auditable, and globally accepted at the highest levels in the world. Look, the BIS, the IMF, the UST, the US Fed, G7, etc., they all know about Iraq, and they all know about the trade globally, just as the World Customs Organization does, just as the WTO. In fact, joining the World, or the Bank of International Settlements, forgive me, is probably similar to a timing thing of maybe the WTO session, because that's the level that we're talking about cross-border trade. They're going to want the security and stability. They want the guarantees. They want all those things. And they've been working on this for decades. And now it's come to this time frame. I believe what could be the catalyst for it all to work, once they have the signatures, is exposure of a real effective exchange rate. That's just my view on this, okay? So anyway, let's see what they do, because what I'm trying to say is that having the tripartites, for instance, the tripartite budget is very interesting. And that has components of it because it was meant for a specific reason. It was meant for it to be stable like they have. They've been stable at 1310, but that's not a real effective exchange rate. But they've also done many different things. They've kept the inflation low, which is less than 2%. All of these things support Iraq is doing what they said they're going to do. Al-Alaq has an article out. I should have printed it off, but the bottom line is you come into Patreon and you can see the difference between 2023 and 2024 and to date, how much focus the public have in increased electronic payments. It's amazing in the percentages. Take a look at it. It's important because it really is showing market acceptance at the public level for electronic payments, far beyond that I ever imagined in a short period of time. And within 1 year, we're talking 200%, 300% in time, something to those effects, okay? Take a look at those types of things, because all of those things are components of, you need the public's perception. You need that confidence, especially with the public. But they're using electronic payments, and it's not compulsory. In other words, they're not obligated to do it. They're doing it on their own. And they know that it's going to be a big time. It's going to be a really big time for them. And I hope so, because they deserve it the most too. But the bottom line is, everybody in the world is going to be doing trade. The Development Road Project, the Port of Fa, all of those things are meant for building and reconstructing a country. And don't forget, keep in mind, at the end of the day, a real effective exchange rate done properly with all these different technologies at the same time will provide that stability and the liquidity to be able to do it all. It's fascinating. And don't forget, those technologies will offer yields in some cases. So enjoy your weekend coming up, and we'll see you soon. Thank you for being with us. If you like my content, hit the like button and subscribe, and we'll see you shortly. Once again, guys, don't forget to hit that like button if you like this content, subscribe to the channel, or join us at the Militia Man and Crew Patreon community for even more exclusive content. You can also donate to this channel by hitting the links in the banner to help keep this page up and running. Your generous support is greatly appreciated, as always. Much, much appreciated. Thank you so much, and have a great day.